Hello, this is Hwan San Sinim, and welcome to our program. Recently, I had the opportunity to share the meditation teachings of my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, with a group of professionals who work in Seoul. This is a group of people in the same profession who all believe in Buddhism, and about once a month they gather to learn about Buddhism and to learn about Buddhist practices such as meditation. So on this occasion, I was privileged to be able to share what I know about sun meditation with them. And as so often happens, actually as always happens, when I meet with a group of beginning modern meditators, modern people who are learning meditation for the first time, there is always someone or a few people who have trouble with the breathing, with dantian breathing or abdominal breathing. There's always someone who's breathing through their mouth. And they don't understand that when we enter into abdominal breathing or dantian breathing, we have to breathe only through our nose. And they also almost always have trouble combining the breathing technique of dantian breathing with the imoko hwadu, or question, that we use in sun meditation. Now, this is a problem, I believe, that has always existed, especially within the modern era of Korean Buddhism. A lot of people that I meet often say to me that they think that I may be the first modern Buddhist teacher, or someone who shares Buddhist practices and teachings. But the truth is, I believe the first truly modern Buddhist teacher was actually Sun Master Songdam. It's been 42 years since Sun Master Songdam first began to teach publicly as the leader of our community. It's been 42 years since he began giving public Dharma speeches that anyone could attend. And at that time, he was highly unique in the fact that he directed his Dharma speeches toward people who knew almost nothing about Buddhism and meditation in particular. And in his Dharma speeches, he explained sun meditation in scientific terms in a way that would be understandable to this new generation of Koreans in the 70s who were working and learning in a newly industrialized society. So even at that time, he was meeting people like I meet, who have trouble combining breathing and meditation. So that's going to be the topic of today's program. How can we learn to combine our abdominal breathing with our sun meditative focus on imoko? Now, for the purpose of learning how to combine our breathing technique with our mental concentration technique in sun meditation, back in the early days, 40 years ago, when Sun Master Songdam first began teaching sun meditation, he always taught what's called breath counting meditation as a training exercise to prepare beginners for sun meditation. And after a while, and I don't know the reason for this, but after a few years, he stopped teaching breath counting meditation. So by the time I became a Buddhist monastic, I was not being asked to perform breath counting meditation, even though I did do a little bit of it, in my beginning years. But now, having met all of these new modern meditators, I think the time is right for us to bring back Sun Master Songdam's original program of teaching breath counting meditation first. So how do we perform breath counting meditation? First of all, we assume traditional sun meditation posture. Now, I would like to encourage those of you who are trying meditation for the first time to sit in a chair like I'm sitting now. Even if you can assume the half lotus or lotus posture, which is traditionally used in sun meditation, it's important that our bodies be fully relaxed and comfortable when we first learn meditation techniques. So sit in a chair as I am, place your feet flat on the floor comfortably, and sit with your knees about hip distance apart. And from here, straighten your back. Take your right hand palm up, place the edge of it against your abdomen. Place your left hand on top, and then allow your thumb tips to meet each other gently to create an elegant rainbow arc. Tuck in your chin slightly so that the crown of your head rises to the ceiling. Take the tip of your tongue and place it lightly against the roof of your mouth just behind your upper row of teeth. Look forward with a soft and open gaze, but do not stare at any point or object or pattern in the floor in front of you. From here, try to relax your body from head to toe so that you are not tensing any muscle groups you don't need to use to hold this posture. So now we've achieved correct meditative posture. Now let's enter into the practice of abdominal breathing directly. In abdominal breathing, we only use the nose, so do not use your mouth. When we engage abdominal breathing, we inhale slowly and more quietly than usual, and as we inhale, we push out our lower belly, as if the air is going down into our lower belly. It's not actually happening on a biological level, but in the way that it feels, that's how it should feel like. We breathe in as if the air is filling our lower belly and inflating it, and when our lower belly feels about 80% full, we pause for 2 to 3 seconds. Then finally, when we exhale, we suck in our lower belly. We pull our belly button toward our spine as if we're squeezing the air out of our lower belly so that it exits our nose in a long, quiet out-breath. The out-breath should be longer than the in-breath. So in total, we inhale and inflate our lower belly for about 2 to 3 seconds. We pause for about 2 to 3 seconds, and then we exhale as we deflate our lower belly for a longer out-breath of 3 to 4 seconds. So why don't we try that right now? So together, inhale, pause, then exhale. When we breathe, it's important to breathe in a very natural, quiet, and smooth, uninterrupted way. So even though our bodies may remain relaxed and calm, devote your full attention to the simple act of breathing in, pausing, and breathing out. So once again, together breathe in, pause, then breathe out. Once again, breathe in, pause, then breathe out. Those of you who have been following our program will be very familiar with this technique of Dantian breathing. Now let's add the counting aspect. We're going to perform Dantian breathing as usual. We will breathe in, hold, breathe out, and at the very end of our out-breath, we will count in our minds, mentally, 1. Then we breathe in, pause, exhale, and at the end of our out-breath again, we count 2. We inhale, pause, breathe out, 3. And we proceed in this manner all the way up to 10. And once we get to 10, we start counting back down. So we breathe 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and so forth, all the way back down to 1. And we perform this breath counting meditation as a game. And the rule of the game is, if we forget what number we're on, if we're in the middle of it and we think, is this number 5? Is this breath number 6? Then we have to go back to start again. We have to go back to 1 again. If we even hesitate, then we still have to go back down to 1 again. So this is how it's done. Now, for those of you who practice this, what we will find immediately is that it's much harder than it looks. With a 10-second breath cycle, there is 10 seconds between each number count. And in 10 seconds, what we find is that we can have very many distracting thoughts. And it's these distracting thoughts that make it difficult. We breathe in, pause, breathe out, count, and then for 10 seconds, we may end up thinking about other things so that when we get to the next breath, we've already forgotten what number we're on. So in this way, if we keep practicing, eventually the distracting thoughts begin to disappear. Eventually, we have enough concentration to count from one breath to the next. Now, this method of breath counting meditation, as simple as it sounds, actually teaches us and trains us in three very, very important skills. The first is breathing in a regular, systematic, and proper way. When we perform breath counting meditation as a daily practice, our breathing will become very, very stable and regular. And this very stable and regular breathing pattern has all sorts of mental and physical health benefits, which I'll get to in a few minutes. The second skill that we learn is that we are able to gain enhanced awareness of what's going on in our own minds. And so what we find is that when we see the distracting thought start to emerge, we become aware of it. We are able to recognize the moment that we are losing concentration. We are able to recognize the moment that we are directing our attention at something different. And this is very, very important because if we don't have this skill, as most of us don't, what happens is without really realizing, we fall into daydreaming or mental reveries. And this happens all the time at work, at school, and even in the middle of conversations. I think you'll really understand what I'm talking about. So we gain the ability to recognize the moment in which we're becoming distracted. The third skill that we gain is the ability to redirect our attention back to the target that we want it to be on. So these are the three important skills: regular, stable breathing, the ability to recognize when we're being distracted, and then the ability to redirect our attention back to its intended target. When we are trained in these three skills and exercise them on a regular basis, we will gain what I consider to be the great four benefits of breath counting meditation. The first is physical health. Most of us think of breathing as a way to gain oxygen, gain the precious oxygen that we need to live. But actually, breathing also performs the very important function of cleansing our bodies. But even more important than that are the mental health benefits. Scientists now recognize that Dantian breathing actually directly affects our central nervous system, our brain and our nervous system, and puts us into what's called a state of relaxed alertness. In the state of relaxed alertness, our bodies are calm and relaxed, minimizing waste of energy and muscular tension. Our emotions are peaceful and quiet, but also a little bit joyful. And this is very important. When our emotions are a little bit joyful, we no longer seek pleasure and satisfaction from something outside of us. We are happy to be where we are. And these two benefits lead to the third, which is we gain the benefit of what I call long-term concentration. Now, when you hear the word long-term conversation, many of us will think the ability to concentrate for many hours, like studying all night, or being able to give a presentation or attend a meeting for several hours in a row. And of course, all of these things are very important, but I would like to introduce a much larger idea of long-term concentration. I would like to say that this type of meditation allows us to maintain mental focus over not just hours, but days, weeks, months, and years, even decades, so that we are able to hold our primary life goals in our minds and pursue them over extended time. This is true long-term concentration, and this also is a benefit of breath counting meditation. The fourth benefit of breath counting meditation that I would like to introduce to you is the cultivation of character. And this I think we may find surprising. How can simply counting our breaths lead to the cultivation of character? But I would like to say here that when we perform breath counting meditation and then later sun meditation, we regain our lost sincerity. When we are children and we play, we do things just for the pure enjoyment of doing them. We don't look for external gain beyond that. We play because we like it, we do things because we like it, and we invest all of our heart, all of our concentration into them. But as we grow older, we become more strategic. We do things to get something else. And so we begin to lose our sincerity. We begin to use what's in front of us rather than allowing ourselves to immerse ourselves in what we do and where we're at. And in this way, we lose sincerity. But in breath counting meditation, we train ourselves to give our total attention to the simple, seemingly trivial task of breathing, something that we can do automatically. When we breathe in, that is all we are doing with all of our heart and soul. We are paying as much attention as possible to the simple experience of inhaling. When we pause, we become completely still and quiet within, and we allow ourselves to be fully aware of this peace and quietness. Finally, when we exhale, we once again immerse ourselves totally in the experience of the out-breath. And so in this very small unit of time, we learn to give all of our heart and mind to it. And this skill can be transferred to all the tasks of daily living. We will be able at any moment to do what we do in daily life with the utmost sincerity. And this will completely transform the way we experience life. One way or the other, through these skills and benefits of breath counting meditation, we become prepared not only to perform sun meditation, but also to live our lives. Now, why don't we listen to Sun Master Songdam as he teaches how to combine this abdominal breathing with the Imoko Hwadu that we use in sun meditation. So please assume correct sun meditation posture, engage Dantian breathing, and together we will once again learn from Sun Master Songdam.
군금 욕식 무일인된 분리 천차 만별 중이니라 나 단지 공월락담심 쟁사치원 왕노형이니라 나 군금욕식무일인된 분리천차만명 중이다. 천차만별이라는 것은 육체가 처해 있는 모든 상황, 행주, 좌와, 어묵동정, 그리고 마음으로는 희로애락, 육체적인, 정신적인 모든 상황, 천차만별인 것입니다. 천차만별중을 여의지 말아라. 눈으로 무엇을 들어도 이먹고, 코로 무슨 냄새를 맡아도 이먹고, 귀로 무슨 소리를 듣거나 눈으로 무엇을 보거나 일체처 일체처에서 바로 그 놈을 여의고 찾을 것이 아니라 무슨 소리가 들리면 그 소리에 즉해서 이모고 버리고 찾는 것은 올바른 수행이 아닌 것입니다. 바로 거기에 즉해서 화두를 떡 거각을 하면 천차만별이 바로 조사의 설법이고 부처님의 설법이 되고 선배의 채찍질이 될 것입니다. 단지 공월 낙담심하라. 원수인은 샘 속에 달이 비치니까 그 하늘에 있는 달이 떨어졌다고 수백 마리의 원숭이가 팔에 팔을 연결해 가지고 그 달을 건지려고 하다가 빠져 죽은 설화가 있습니다. 달은 못에 떨어져 있는 것이 아니라 허공에 여의지 않고 있는 것입니다. 이것은 번뇌나 망상이나 슬픔이나 기쁨이나 온 세계의 흥망성쇠나 생로병사가 다 우리의 한 마음의 나타남인 것입니다. 그렇기 때문에 바로 거기에 즉해서 화두를 들은 사람은 지혜 있는 사람이요, 희로애락과 흥망성쇠에 끄달린 사람은 어리석은 원숭이가 물속에 비추는 달을 건지려고 하는 것과 같은 것입니다. 온 세계도 마찬가지지만 오늘날까지 우리의 마음을 기쁘게 하는 일은 적고 걱정스러운 일들은 끊임없이 옛날과 다름없이 일어나고 있습니다마는 그런 것들이 꿈속에 일어나는 일이요, 다 중생의 지은 업으로 일어나서 일어나는 일이니 그런 것들이 걱정이 되면 우리로서는 화두를 단속하고 정진하는 일밖에는 없습니다. 오늘 너무 말을 많이 한 것 같습니다. 한철을 오늘 이러한 한결같은 마음으로 그렇게 잘 지내시기를 부탁을 드립니다.
Before considering what Sun Master Songdam has taught in his Dharma speech, let's review once again the basic parts of breath counting meditation. So we enter into the traditional sun meditative posture. We engage abdominal breathing. We inhale, pause, then exhale. 1. Then again inhale, pause, then exhale. 2. Once again inhale, pause, then exhale. 3. As you can see, when you actually perform breath counting meditation or imoko in traditional sun meditation, there is quite a bit of time between the numbers, quite a bit of time between the actual uttering of imoko in sun meditation. And as Sun Master Songdam referred to in his Dharma speech, in that time all kinds of thoughts arise in that time between numbers, between utterances of the phrase imoko. And no matter how many times the ancient teachers and modern teachers like Sun Master Songdam tell us that we don't really need to be so worried about these distracting thoughts, inevitably, because they are so distracting, we find ourselves concerned by them, upset by them. We begin to feel like these distracting thoughts are in fact an obstacle. In fact, as I mentioned at the beginning of this program, when I met with that group of professionals to share the teachings of sun meditation, many of them expressed their frustration and shock at the number of distracting thoughts that occur during sun meditation, and also the shocking quality of some of those thoughts. We have, all sorts of different kinds of thoughts, and when we take the time to observe what's going on in our own minds, we may be surprised to find all kinds of ridiculous or even ugly or even truly embarrassing kinds of thoughts that we have. And so they asked me, isn't this some kind of reflection on our karma or on our character? But Sun Master Songdam, in his Dharma speech, very clearly tells us that the distracting thoughts are not an obstacle. We use them as a springboard to return to our original object of attention, the imoko hadu in sun meditation, or the breath counting number in breath counting meditation. And this is a unique feature of Sun Buddhist meditation as practiced in Korea. In many forms, in some forms of Buddhist meditation, the purpose or the procedure is to actually observe the thoughts as they arise, linger, and pass away. And in observing this arisal and passage of thoughts, sometimes in some forms of meditation, the meditator is told to recognize and label the thought. So this is an angry thought, or this is a sad thought, or a happy thought, and so forth. Some forms of psychotherapy also use a similar method where you're taught to observe the kinds of thoughts and emotions that occur in your mind, recognize them, and put labels on them so that you can understand what's going on. And I believe both forms of therapy and meditation are well known in the world of meditative practice. But sun meditation, as practiced in Korea, is unusual in that you don't have to worry what the content of the distracting thought is. The distracting thought is basically a kind of an illusion that's occurring in your mind that has no basis in reality. It doesn't deserve further attention and scrutiny. We literally use it as a springboard to come back to our original target, whether it's counting breaths or whether it's imoko in sun meditation. So what does that mean, to use a distracting thought as a springboard? Once again, let's go back to the skills that we initially learn when we're trained in breath counting meditation, specifically the first one. Using a distracting thought as a springboard means that we are able to recognize almost immediately that we're thinking about the wrong thing. That recognition tells us to redirect, realign our line of mental attention, our mental gaze. It is the moment of recognition that is key. The distracting thought itself, its content, its quality, whatever, is completely unimportant. So there is a radical dismissal of mental activity, of all these thoughts and emotions that many of us think are so important and many of us feel are an important part of our identity. In some meditation, what's taught is they are secondary. What's important is the source itself of awareness. And so immediately we are trained to dismiss and move past distracting thoughts without even bothering to struggle with them. And when we do that, a very interesting thing happens. Those distracting thoughts disappear on their own. It is the nature of distracting thoughts simply to dissolve and disappear, as long as we don't feed them with the energy of our attention. When we direct our attention toward distracting thoughts, we cause them to proliferate. When we direct our attention away from distracting thoughts, we cause them to wither and disappear very, very quickly, surprisingly quickly. And if we practice breath counting meditation over time, we will find that the distracting thoughts disappear. Because they disappear and our mind becomes clear, it becomes very easy to do the breath counting. The numbers come automatically. And then we learn something that on the one hand is very obvious, but on the other hand may come as a revelation. Our brain will actually do what we tell it to do. If we hold the intention in our mind, I'm going to count my breaths now from 1 to 10 and then back down to 1 again, it will happen automatically as long as I don't have too many distracting thoughts. This is how much our distracting thoughts interfere with the proper functioning of our mind and body. For this reason, in the Buddhist tradition, distracting thoughts were called klesha, which means affliction. In Korean Buddhism, that word klesha is translated as the Korean word 번뇌, which means vexation, something that irritates, distracts, and obstructs us. Literally, the word means vexing and vexing again. These distracting thoughts, when removed, allow our minds and bodies to perform and function as they ought to. And when our brain begins to function properly, our perception becomes much more clear. And then we will discover the next delightful discovery, which is we become better at problem solving, we become better at evaluating situations, we become more creative in our response to issues. In a word, we seem to get smarter. Now, I think that this is a topic of great concern, especially to the young students and professionals that I often meet. So often I hear young people, and older ones as well, saying, I just wish I were smarter. I just wish I were more talented. And I think my experience of both breath counting meditation and sun meditation has taught me that kind of thought, I wish I was smarter, is kind of a waste of time. The problem in life for almost all of us is not to increase our intelligence, but to actually use the intelligence that we already have. Consider something that most of us know already. The average person, the statistically average person, they have between their ears and in their skulls still the greatest computer in the world. So why doesn't our brain work as well as we would like it to? And we discover the answer to that question in breath counting meditation, which is we're just having too many distracting thoughts. Imagine that your brain is an actual computer. Imagine that your field of conscious awareness, the part of your mind that's paying attention to that thing, imagine that the field of conscious awareness is the desktop on your computer. And imagine that the desktop page, that screen, you just begin to open up every possible kind of window there. You begin to run all the programs. You play videos, you play music, you open every pop-up ad that's possible. How will that computer perform? After a while, you'll use up all of the storage capacity of the computer, and even the simplest tasks of the computer won't be able to be performed, and the computer will seem to freeze. Then imagine that computer is filled with useless files and programs and subroutines. Imagine also that it has malware. It has computer viruses that interfere with a computer's proper functioning. Then how will that computer perform? Is the problem the computer itself, or is it all of these interfering issues such as the useless programs, files, malware, and so forth? Is the solution to the problem to get more disk space, to add another hard disk? Or is the solution to the problem to remove all the things that are interfering with the computer's proper functioning, to remove those viruses, to delete those files, to shut down unnecessary windows, to close unnecessary programs? Wouldn't that restore the optimal functioning of the computer? The metaphor here, I think, is obvious. We, with all of our distracting thoughts, are having the same problem as that computer. The real problem here is not to become smarter, but to use the intelligence that we already have. And that is what breath counting meditation and sun meditation allow us to do. When we engage in meditation, we begin to shut down all those useless windows one by one. We begin to shut down all the programs that we don't need one by one. Now, the specific feature of sun meditation, when we engage imo-go by raising the great doubt, we have benefits that extend beyond those of breath counting meditation. That's why we don't just stay with breath counting meditation. We only use breath counting meditation as a training exercise to prepare us for sun meditation. When we enter into sun meditation and learn how to raise the doubt, that doubt begins, I believe, to eliminate not only our distracting thoughts, but also underlining unconscious emotional complexes, obsessive thought patterns, and automatic habits that we may not even realize are there. That is the equivalent of putting in an antivirus software that automatically roots out all of the malware and viruses and so forth that may be plaguing your computer. In fact, it acts automatically so that every time you turn on the computer, you don't have to turn on that program. That's how the doubt begins to function. And when we do practice sun meditation over time, we do indeed find that our mind is becoming more clear. Please imagine what it would be like if we could use our brains the way they were meant to be used. If our brains would simply do what we asked it to do. In my experience of sun meditation, at the very least, we will have enhanced memorization. We will be able to absorb data much more quickly because we're not being distracted. There's nothing else competing for our attention. Well, our problem-solving skills also increase, and our creativity also increases. Imagine also what it would be like if we could live our lives at work, at home, and in our relationships without distracting emotions like worrying and anxiety and unresolved anger and resentment and disappointment and loneliness and sorrow. How would we function in the world if we had some kind of internal system that immediately nipped those negative emotions in the bud? At the very least, I have found, we will have the courage to exercise our creativity, to consider ideas, unusual ideas that maybe normally we'd be afraid to consider. Maybe we would be afraid of the reactions of people around us. We have the confidence to pursue the interests that we're truly interested in without worrying what people think about us, without worrying about how we appear in front of the world. Are not these benefits alone worth engaging in sun meditation? So this is a kind of revolutionary benefit that comes along with the practice of breath counting meditation initially, and then in sun meditation later. So I won't say here that breath counting meditation and sun meditation will make you smarter. It's a well-known fact among clinical psychologists that it is extremely difficult to elevate our IQ. But I will say that both breath counting meditation and sun meditation, I believe, give us something better. They make us as smart as we can possibly be. This, of course, is not the goal of sun meditation, but it is a benefit, I believe, that most of our viewers will be highly interested to hear. And when we experience this benefit for ourselves, it only increases our motivation to investigate this beautiful and rich tradition of Sun Buddhist meditation even more. Most of us have never experienced what life can be like without the ailment of distracting thoughts, without the affliction of an unending stream, often painful thoughts and emotions that constantly compete for our attention and interfere with everything that we do literally in day-to-day life. This is the promise that's offered by the Sun Buddhist tradition. What would life be like if we could remove that affliction, if our minds and bodies can function and live as they were intended to live? We have never experienced that before. Can you believe that? Wouldn't it be amazing if we could finally learn to experience that? Wouldn't it be like being born again? So consider this very carefully, the promise that both breath counting meditation and sun meditation hold for us. And in closing for today's program, I would like to recommend the following, let's say, homework for those of our viewers who are interested in pursuing a daily practice of sun meditation. Even if you are highly experienced in sun meditation, how about if you practiced a little bit of breath counting meditation first and then enter into your usual sun meditation? For those of us who are still beginners, practice breath counting meditation for a while, and then once you get pretty good at counting the numbers, you can switch over to sun meditation. Sun Master Songdam has promised in his Dharma speeches that if we gain the ability to count our breaths from 1 to 100 and then from 100 back down to 1 again, without making any mistakes along the way, we will have the mental strength and stability to achieve any of our goals. We will also have built a proper foundation for our sun meditation practice. So this is something that I would very much like to recommend to all of our viewers. We're at the end of today's program once again. So once again, I will thank all of our viewers for tuning in for today's program. And I will close with our traditional closing meditation. May we all attain enlightenment. And now, if you're not already in meditative posture, please reassume sun meditation posture. Engage Dantian breathing. Raise the Hwadu Imoko and generate the doubt. We will now enter into our closing meditation.